Fact or fiction? Decoding the rumors and fan accounts about Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. Where stories begin, the human need to believe. Every era has its myths. In the age of cinema and social media, those myths are often built around celebrities, particularly around relationships that appear emotionally charged on screen. When two actors share convincing chemistry, audiences do not simply watch, they feel. And when feelings lack a clear outlet, they search for continuation beyond the screen. This is where many rumors about Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson begin, not in fact, but in longing. The 50 Shades films created an intense, controversial, and emotionally charged fictional relationship. It was designed to provoke reaction, fantasy, debate, and identification. Once released into the world, it did exactly that. But as the films ended, something else happened. For some viewers, the emotional investment did not. What followed was a gradual blurring between character and actor, performance and reality, fiction and assumed truth. This essay does not aim to deny emotion or dismiss fandom. Instead, it asks a quieter, more difficult question: how much of what we believe about celebrity relationships comes from evidence? And how much comes from our own desire to extend a story that has already ended? On-screen chemistry, a crafted illusion. Chemistry on screen is not accidental. It is constructed through casting, direction, editing, lighting, music, and repetition. It is rehearsed, refined, and shaped to elicit specific emotional responses. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson were cast precisely because they could convey tension, vulnerability, and intimacy convincingly. Their performances were meant to feel immediate and personal, even invasive. That was the artistic intention of the material. But convincing chemistry does not imply emotional spillover. Actors are trained to enter emotional states and exit them. In fact, the ability to disengage from a role is considered a sign of professionalism. Without that boundary, acting becomes psychologically dangerous. The audience, however, does not receive the behind-the-scenes context. They receive only the final image, polished, intensified, emotionally loaded. And when that image is repeated across multiple films, interviews, promotional tours, and viral clips, it begins to feel continuous. Continuity creates the illusion of truth. 3. The rise of fan narratives. Fan narratives rarely begin maliciously. They are often born from affection, curiosity, and imaginative engagement. Fans notice moments, glances during interviews, shared laughter, perceived awkwardness, or perceived warmth, and begin to connect them into stories. Over time, these stories gain momentum. Online spaces amplify them. Clips are slowed down, zoomed in, replayed. Body language is decoded like a secret language. Neutral interactions are reframed as hidden signals. Once a narrative takes shape, confirmation bias does the rest. Evidence that fits the story is collected and shared. Evidence that contradicts it is ignored or reinterpreted. At this stage, the story no longer belongs to the people involved. It belongs to the audience. Fictional love and emotional projection. One of the most powerful forces behind these narratives is projection. Audiences often project unmet emotional needs onto fictional relationships. When a story resonates deeply, particularly stories about desire, vulnerability, or transformation, it can feel personal. The characters become symbolic stand-ins for hopes, fantasies, or unresolved feelings. When the actors behind those characters appear together in real life, the projection transfers. This is not a failure of intelligence. It is a feature of human psychology. We are storytelling creatures. We seek patterns. We extend narratives beyond their original boundaries because endings feel unsatisfying. But projection becomes problematic when it is mistaken for evidence. Versus public appearances and misread signals. Press tours are unnatural environments. Actors are asked to discuss intimate material repeatedly, often under exhaustion, jet lag, and intrusive questioning. Their reactions, humor, discomfort, detachment, warmth, are not neutral data points. Yet fan narratives treat them as clues. A laugh becomes intimacy. A pause becomes tension. A lack of enthusiasm becomes conflict. What is often ignored as the simplest explanation: people respond differently to pressure. Jamie Dornan has consistently described himself as private, reserved, and uncomfortable with excessive attention. Dakota Johnson has spoken openly about anxiety, discomfort with invasive questions, and the emotional toll of fame. Different coping mechanisms can look like emotional distance or closeness, depending on the viewer's expectation. Expectation shapes interpretation. The problem with reading between the lines. Fan accounts often claim to read between the lines, suggesting that what is not said is more meaningful than what is. This approach assumes that there is a hidden truth being concealed, that observers are capable of uncovering it through fragments. But silence does not automatically imply secrecy, and ambiguity does not automatically imply intimacy. In many cases, silence simply reflects boundaries. The danger of overinterpretation is that it replaces actual testimony with imagined subtext. When actors explicitly state that their relationship is professional, respectful, and bounded, and this is dismissed as media training, the audience positions itself as more truthful than the people involved. At that point, speculation becomes appropriation. The emotional cost of blurred narratives. While fan narratives may feel harmless, they have real consequences. They can reduce complex individuals to symbolic roles, undermine personal boundaries, invite invasive scrutiny into private lives, create pressure to perform or deny imagined dynamics. For actors, this can mean navigating not only their own emotions, but the emotional investments of millions of strangers. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson are not characters once the camera stops rolling. They are individuals with separate lives, relationships, and responsibilities. When fiction is mistaken for reality, those lives become collateral. 8. Fact, fiction, and the illusion of access. Social media has created the illusion of access. Fans feel closer to celebrities than ever before, yet this closeness is one-directional. The audience sees fragments, the full context remains invisible. This imbalance encourages speculation. The less we know, the more we imagine. And imagination, when shared collectively, gains false authority. At some point, fan theories begin to sound like consensus, not because they are factual, but because they are repeated. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity masquerades as truth. Why certain stories persist. Stories about forbidden or hidden relationships are emotionally compelling. They suggest depth, conflict, and sacrifice. They offer an alternative narrative to stability and ordinariness. In celebrity culture, stable relationships are often considered boring. Speculative ones are exciting. This cultural bias ensures that rumors persist even in the absence of evidence. The question then becomes not, is this true? But, why do we want it to be true? Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan as separate narratives. One of the most important steps in decoding these rumors is separating individuals from the roles they played, and from each other. Dakota Johnson's public reflections about fame, discomfort, and growth belong to her story. Jamie Dornan's choices around privacy, family, and career belong to his. They intersected professionally. That intersection was intense, public, and creatively demanding. But intersection is not fusion. Assuming emotional entanglement because two narratives touched is a misunderstanding of adult collaboration. 11. The ethics of speculation. Speculation becomes unethical when it ignores explicit statements, overrides personal boundaries, treats individuals as characters rather than people, continues despite evidence to the contrary. Curiosity is natural, entitlement is not. There is a difference between appreciating chemistry and insisting on its continuation beyond consent. 12. Truth as the absence of drama. The most likely truth is often the least dramatic. Two actors worked closely under intense conditions. They respected each other. They navigated fame differently. They returned to their own lives. This explanation does not satisfy longing. It does not extend fantasy. It does not provide mystery. But it respects reality. 13. What fan narratives reveal about us. Ultimately, these stories reveal less about Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, and more about us. They reveal a desire for emotional continuity, a discomfort with endings, a tendency to romanticize intensity, a reluctance to accept boundaries. In projecting onto celebrities, we explore our own unmet narratives. This does not make fans foolish. It makes them human. But humanity requires reflection. 14. Conclusion. Letting fiction be fiction. Fact and fiction serve different purposes. Fiction allows us to feel deeply. Fact allows us to live responsibly. When the two blur, confusion arises, not because truth is hidden, but because imagination resists release. Decoding the rumors around Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson does not require exposing secrets. It requires recognizing where the story truly belongs, on screen, not in their lives. Chemistry was real, in performance. Connection was real, in work. The rest belongs to the audience's imagination. And imagination, powerful as it is, must eventually learn when to let go.